You know, algorithms are making decisions about your life right now. From the loan you apply for to the job you might get. We kind of trust them to be fair, to be objective. But what if they're not? In this explainer, we are digging deep into the hidden world of algorithmic bias.
And look, this isn't just some thought experiment. It's probably the most critical question of our time. Every single second, these automated systems are making life-altering decisions for millions, and I mean millions of people. The stakes are just immense, and the consequences? They are very, very real. I mean, just look at this finding. An algorithm used in U.S. courts was literally twice as likely to falsely flag black defendants as future criminals than white defendants. Now, this isn't a simple error, It's a digital system that's encoding and actually amplifying real-world prejudice, and it has absolutely devastating consequences for people's lives. So, and this is the crucial point, we are not just talking about a few isolated bugs or glitches in the system. No, we're talking about a widespread pattern with really serious implications all across society. And this bias, it's not just stuck in the justice system, not at all. It's in facial recognition that fails people of color, it's in financial algorithms that unfairly deny loans, and it's even in the HR software that might just toss your resume before a human ever even sees it. It's woven right into the fabric of our modern world. Okay, so if we're going to fix this problem, we first have to really understand it, right? We have to define it. So what do we actually mean when we say algorithmic bias? Because it's a lot more than just a computer with a prejudice. Now, this definition from Harvard is really, really important. Think of it like this. The algorithm isn't just inventing prejudice out of thin air. It's more like a mirror, reflecting the biases that are already out there in our society. But then it takes those biases, it amplifies them, and it hard-codes them into a system that looks perfectly neutral on the surface. And this is where we have to make a really critical distinction. In our everyday language, bias is a bad word. It means prejudice, unfairness. But in a technical or a statistical sense, it just means a deviation from a standard. And that standard could be anything. This is super important to remember because it turns out not all technical bias is morally bad. All right. So if the algorithm isn't prejudiced in the way we usually think about it, then where does all this harmful bias actually come from? Well, it's not magic. It has very specific and very human origins.
You know this quote from PwC? It just hits the nail on the head. AI isn't some independent thing floating out in the ether. It's a tool. It's built by people, it's trained on data that we collected from our world, and it's interpreted by people. And the bias can get in at every single one of those human touchpoints.
So let's break down how this bias actually creeps into the system. It can start with the data. Remember that recidivism tool? Well, if the historical arrest data it was trained on already reflected biased policing, guess what? The AI learns that bias. Or it can be in the algorithm's design itself, where a programmer accidentally tells it to focus on the wrong factors. It can also happen when an algorithm designed for one thing gets used for something totally different. That's a classic context error. And finally, the algorithm can be perfect, but a human misinterprets what it's telling them. Okay, so now for a bit of a plot twist. I mean, after everything we've just talked about, it's pretty natural to think that all bias just has to be eliminated, right? But the reality of creating a fair system, well, it's surprisingly complex. I know it sounds completely counterintuitive, right? But what if I told you that in some cases, we might actually want to introduce a specific kind of bias into a system on purpose? Okay, here's the key difference we need to wrap our heads around. A moral bias is when an algorithm makes an unfair outcome worse, like healthcare inequality. To fight that, we can intentionally introduce a statistical bias. So imagine a company wants its leadership to be, say, 50% women. But historically, it's only been 10%. Well, instead of training your hiring AI on that flawed 10% data from the past, you train it on an idealized dataset that reflects the 50-50 goal you're aiming for. You're basically teaching it the future you want, not the past you have. I mean, think about that for a second. This is a pretty radical idea, right? We can strategically use technically biased data to fight real-world moral bias. It's about making a choice to deviate from a flawed reality in our data so we can build an algorithm that creates a fairer outcome in the real world. Okay, so we've defined the problem, we've seen where it comes from. Now for the big question, how do we actually go about fixing this? Well, the good news is there's a roadmap. Well, PwC lays out a pretty clear roadmap. First, organizations have to figure out where their biggest risks are. Then comes really tight data control. You have to watch out for things called proxies, like using a zip code which can accidentally stand in for something like race. And this isn't a one-and-done fix. It needs constant oversight. And crucially, teams have to be diversified. Why? Because different life experiences spot different flaws. And finally, everything needs to be double-checked by an independent validator.
And look, there is no single silver bullet for this. There just isn't. Fixing this takes a whole bunch of things working together. It means using better data and doing constant audits, but it also means keeping humans in the loop for those really critical decisions. It means building inclusive teams from the very beginning and pushing for smarter rules and regulations. Every single one of these pieces is absolutely essential.
So, after all that, where does this leave us? You know, it's really tempting to see this as just a technical problem that has some technical fix. But the reality is, it's much more profound than that.
You know, this quote from the United Nations University it frames it perfectly. Our societal norms, they change. Our understanding of what fair even means, that evolves. So our work to make our algorithms fair can't be a one-time thing. It has to be this continuous process of monitoring, of questioning, and of improving.
And so we're left with this. AI is a mirror. It reflects the choices we make and the data we give it. This isn't just about debugging code, it's about defining our values. The ultimate challenge is a deeply human one. As we build our future, what kind of world, what values will we choose to encode?